She's overgrown students.
So thank you for inviting me, and Victoria in particular. I met Victoria at San Juan Island National Historical Park a zillion times, it seems. We used to do encampment together when I was a national park ranger there. And so I did not write the book on the pig war, but I worked with the guy who did write the book on the pig war, so a little bit of it got into my head. And the first thing I want to do is ask, how many of you were born and raised and went to school in Washington State? So did you learn about the pig war in school? You did. Isn't that exciting? But usually it's really hard to find people that actually went to school in Washington. Did you know that only about 46% of Washingtonians were born in Washington? Wow. So that means that you didn't learn Washington State history in school, and really important, hugely significant events like the pig war are unknown to so many of us. So because I am a teacher, I have a lot of stuff to pass around just to show maps and images that will help you orient. The first one, if I had PowerPoint, it would be up behind my head, but I'll send around a map. Now, we like to take the map of our region, which is, you can see the Washington Peninsula, I hope, from where you are, but we like to turn it sideways to give it a completely different perspective. You can see the way the Salish Sea, the three arms of the Salish Sea, all intersect here where San Juan Island and Whidbey Island and Port Townsend are. So it gives you a much better idea of why this particular part of Washington was so important geographically, for trade, for battles, and there were lots of more native battles here than there were European and native battles. So usually people get a good laugh out of the idea of the pig war. Isn't this stupid that two countries would actually go to war because somebody killed a pig? But the pig war, and I will get to the pig war, but I kind of have to take a running start to get into it, because the pig war, in my estimation, is the last salvo of a century-long battle for dominion in North America by the United States and Great Britain. So it starts in 1775 with Lexington and Concord, and it doesn't end until the last boundary dispute is settled on San Juan Island in 1872. So I like that. Otherwise, just a pig dying somewhere, it doesn't even leave a mark, does it? So the first map that I'm going to send around, this crisis, you think, how quickly could they have gotten to fighting over the boundary out here? We're so far away. But actually, the United States and Great Britain and Spain were all looking at this place back in 1792. So I'm going to pass around a map that shows North America. Everything in red is British at the end of the Revolutionary War. Everything in green is belongs to the United States, and everything in yellow is Spanish. And so the Pacific Northwest is all white, and that means everybody wants it. So if you are George Washington in 1792 and Spain and England are about to go to war for this white patch here, they're looking at the possibility that all this yellow, if England wins, could become red. And that would make the United States surrounded on three sides by Great Britain. And at the end of the Revolution, George Washington did not want to see that happen. So they are.
4-year fight.
You will get there.
I'm sure you will.
So there is always, through this whole story, a tension between Great Britain and the United States, because of course the Americans want to get the Brits off the continent altogether if they can possibly do it, and that's where a 54-40-year fight comes in. Do you guys all know 54-40-year fight?
No. Yes.
No, 54-40-year fight. So let me back up just a minute. Some of you may know that Americans tried to establish a presence out here, a place that they called Astoria. Didn't last very long. So here, okay, back up quickly, and I swear I'm going to get to the pig war really quickly. 1792, this is the year of George Washington's crisis. George Vancouver was the first European to sail into Puget Sound. And in the same summer, American Robert Gray was the first one to sail into the mouth of the Columbia River. So there's 2 flags planted in the Northwest in 1792. So the Americans are like, well, we can't let Vancouver plant his flag, so we're going to set up this fur trading post in Astoria. It lasted 2 years before the British in the War of 1812 took it away from them. So at the end of the War of 1812, and I'm sending this again, another map around 1818, they decided to share the Pacific Northwest all the way up to 5440, right? What? Yes, you mean share, sort of share. Joint occupation, that means they're not going to go to war with the other if the other one shows up. Okay? And it's going to last like that till 1846. And so when you look at this map, you'll see 2 things. You'll see that America is still thinking it's in the game to go all the way up the coast to where Alaska is. In 1846, they're going to settle it where it is now at the 49th parallel. So you think it's all over. It's not all over. In the period of joint occupation, America was such a young country, they could not just rush out here and start populating this area and settling it. But the British had the Hudson Bay Company. We call them British. Most of them were Scottish, right? And they were out here settling what we call home with fur trading forts. So another map to go around. The location of all the Hudson Bay Company fur trading posts in what's now Washington and southern British Columbia. So they're going to set up really profitable trading networks with all the native people out here. Native people are going to come from the Columbia region on the plateau. They're going to come down from southeast Alaska to trade with the Hudson Bay Company down here. So it's created this global center right here where the Hudson Bay Company forts are. Globalization hits the Pacific Northwest. So in 1846, despite the fact that President Polk wanted to go all the way up to Russian Alaska with the country, they decided they'd settle. We'll do the 49th parallel, just like it is today. And that means that all the Brits, all the British forts, Fort Vancouver on the Columbia, Fort Nisqually on Puget Sound, these forts all have to go north. They got to relocate. And that's how we're going to get Fort Victoria on Vancouver Island. So that is going to get established in the 1840s. And as you know, despite the fact that British interests were trading with all the native peoples here, they were not colonizing. They weren't bringing out their women and children and making communities and building local governments. They were only here to trade. They were getting rich, the Indians were getting rich, everybody was happy, and then suddenly, there goes the neighborhood, here come the Americans. The Americans are going to make trouble everywhere. They don't want to just trade with the natives and get rich. They want to kick the British out, and they want to settle, and they want to take it over and colonize. So it's not good news for the natives, it's not good news for the British. And the British can see them coming, they're starting to come, the Oregon Trail opens up, and they're like, this is such bad news. We can't just be a Hudson Bay Company here on Vancouver Island. We're going to have to form government. So they set up the Crown Colony of Vancouver Island in 1849, and now the British are going to start settling too. Yep. Okay, so I'm getting my players all in the right place here, right? The British are now making the slow move to move all their operations out of American territory. The Oregon Trail is opened up. The Americans are coming out like crazy, and the U.S. government says the best thing we can do now to get settlers out there to make sure the British can never come back is land grants. So from 1850 to 1855, the U.S. government was giving away all of the Pacific Northwest. In Oregon, the Oregon Territory, it's all being given away to settlers if they can come out and settle. So the British, they're looking at this and they're seeing how close all these Americans are coming. And they decide, you know, we see this little problem with the treaty. The treaty that established the boundary, it brings the boundary on the 49th parallel all the way from the Rocky Mountains till it hits salt water. And then it goes south through the main channel, as it says in the treaty, which was written by people who've never been here. And then it makes a hard turn out under Vancouver Island and out the Straits of Juan de Fuca. Well, you guys all know there's a whole lot of islands in the way. So instead of this empty body of water with like say the Straits of Juan de Fuca, right? You can draw that international boundary through the middle of it. It doesn't hit any land anywhere. It's just going straight through the water. But when it comes through the San Juan Islands, it's a maze. It's a labyrinth. And the British, they want all those islands in between. So they interpret that the boundary is coming through on the east side on the Rosario Strait, and the Americans are thinking, well, that wouldn't do at all, because, you know, the San Juan Islands, we need them for strategic sheep purposes. So they want that boundary to come on the west side of San Juan Island. Now, Hudson Bay Company is only 10 miles as the crow flies. Victoria is only 10 miles from the south end of San Juan Island. So San Juan Island is so much closer to Vancouver Island than it is to the American mainland. So the Hudson Bay Company decides to plant its own flag on San Juan Island, because as the British have taught the Americans, whoever plants the flag first gets first dibs, right? So they set up this Bellevue sheep farm in 1853, the same year that Oregon Territory splits up into Washington and Oregon territories. So all the land is being given away to settlers in the Puget Sound area before the treaties are negotiated. Of course, first you give it away, then you get legal rights to it. So there's a lovely artist's rendition of what the Bellevue sheep farm looked like. And if you go there today to the National Park, to American Camp, none of these buildings are still standing here, though the foundations of some of them are there hidden in the grass. But you will get a very similar view. This is what it looks like today, because thank goodness it's a National Historical Park and they haven't put subdivisions and vacation homes all over the prairie. So when you got a lot of people coming out here and you've got treaties being signed and you've got angry native peoples because their treaties are not being met right away, some of these native peoples in Penn Cove on Whidbey Island, where I live, was one of the locations where the territorial legislature set up what they called special Indian agencies. They were internment camps. It was a way of bringing native peoples out of their territories in the foothills while they were waiting for treaties to be ratified and reservations to be established. So it's a really little known story, but we had a rather large internment camp with almost 3,000 natives on Penn Cove in the 1850s, living around about 100 white settlers. So forts were built on Puget Sound to defend, actually not against the British, but from raiding tribes from Alaska. They would come down to trade with the Hudson Bay Company, and while they were down here in Coast Salish territory, they would raid villages for slaves, kill the men, and take the women and children back in slavery. This was a really big problem for our native peoples because they were being assaulted by